Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stories Substack. Sorry, I've had a really busy day today. A lot of things happen in the background. I got some exciting news, which I'll share later. One of the things that so welcome. I appreciate all you all here. One of the things I do with this show is really try to recur some of the collaborations I've done in the past and really see where they're at and talk about their their story a little bit more, so everybody gets a little more familiar with who they are, what they are about, and then more talk about this whatever that soul work is, whatever it might be positive, might be negative, whatever they're working through. I want to talk about that, and then at the end we talk about mostly Substack and how is that helping them or their creative outlet, and more we're all artists in some ways. We use our creativity to express ourselves, and this is a person that I've been following for a while who has probably one of the best positive attitudes that I've ever met, and it's pretty hard not to smile when she's around. And I love to bring her on. Her name is Liz, and if you don't know Liz, please look her up. I'll make sure she's linked in, and we'll bring her in. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, John. I'm doing great. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. And hello to everyone who's watching. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. As I was saying, you're probably one of the best positive persons I've ever met. Every time I'm around, I talk to you or see you, you're always smiling. You're always in this joyful state of mind, and it feels like peaceful. And I don't know if that's true or not. It takes a lot of work to get there, but let's talk about that a little bit because it's contagious. But is that a true statement that you're always in that state, or is it something else?
What a great way to begin. I would say generally, I would say the short answer is yes, in that I try and keep my realm positive and have built a life around uh, adding things into my what I call my toolkit. And I used to tell our kids about, that's just one more lesson to add to the toolkit of life that we all need and we all collect. And so I guess I'm just really grateful because I think for me, I ended up being in a fortuitous position within my family of origin that, you know, the beginnings, I think, were very helpful in that I was number seven out of eight children. My parents had
Wow.
eight kids in 10 and a half years, and the first five out of six were boys. And so by the time I came along, not to say anything about, boys and girls can be equally challenging, they had their hands full. And by the time I came along as number seven, they kind of were like, I got to be free to be me.
Yeah.
And as I've looked back on that, I think that was a real gift because, my siblings had tried just about everything and I could see what worked and what didn't work. And I got to just sort of forge my own way. And
Mhm.
um, I've come to really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
that was my very beginnings.
So you're saying the older children are grumpier.
They won't be watching this, so I can really say whatever I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say they probably don't have the same, maybe
Right.
some of the same mindsets. Although my brother that I'm very, very close to does actually.
Mm. Yeah, so it's interesting because most of the young children or the youngest that I meet like, I'm actually dating someone. I'm involved with somebody who's
Okay.
a younger child, and she has a mindset of letting go, just being free, not to worry about it. And as the oldest child, that's pretty hard for me to grasp because it's not as easy as, what do you mean, let's let it go, right?
Yeah.
This is crucial. Yeah, don't
Yes,
worry
and
about
I
it.
can I can really relate with that because I saw the pressure that was placed on like my oldest brother and my oldest sister, and it's a real thing, the numbers and where you fall into your family hierarchy. And so, how many siblings did you grow up with, John?
So I'm the oldest of three, and
Okay.
my sister is the youngest, and my brother, obviously, the middle child. And yeah, yeah, the three. Yeah. So so your family is an extended family, more or less. So that's really a cool thing. Now, have you always like? Do you get along with everybody? Is that
We
for
could
the
have
most part?
about we could have about 10 podcasts on that, John.
Because family dynamics is pretty tough these days. They're not as easy as because everybody has their own lane, their own opinions. I think everybody has an opinion, which is becoming more and more of a. Uh, I think it's hurting people. I think
Yes.
it's hurting families. Um, and when you find out that person is a particular thing or whatever that thing is, like party or whatever it is, all of a sudden they become the outcast right away, and you disregard everything that you two built from that point on.
Yeah.
I just find that so destructive and so it's just sad. I mean, I'm just referencing your family because you have like 8 children in your family or 8 siblings. How's does that does that play a part in your world there as well?
It's played, it's woven in and out over the years, John, and played an enormous part in my life. And a lot of my growth in recent years has been around around struggles and conflict within my family. And I would say, I grew up feeling like, wow, this is like the Waltons, or Little House on the Prairie. This is too great. And
Good night, John Boy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do too. And so basically my parents we were being raised in Seattle, and then they moved us out to Whidbey Island, because they could see we needed something to do, and idle hands were not really wonderful for my teenage sibs. And so we moved out to a farm, and then we had every animal in the world and sold Jersey milk, and I raised goats and sheep. And it was really wonderful, for me personally. And so in doing that, so that was sort of my childhood experience, and I was very involved in athletics, and also, played some music. And then from there, you go on, you live your life, you do your thing. Um, and then our family has been gathering for reunions. For this summer will be our 38th year
Wow,
in the same destination, which to me seems shocking still, that that's the case.
beautiful. That's awesome.
But there have been conflicts surrounding that, where I guess I'll just dive right in. So not everybody's ideas were always honored, and sometimes it was deeply painful in how certain situations were handled, and so there were divisions, and it became divisive. And so with that, I've sort of, out of necessity, distanced myself and a little bit at different times. And then the real game changer was when our father started battling cancer and eventually passed. And then my mother, I was caring for her, spending a lot of time with her. I wasn't the, sole primary caregiver, but she was in an assisted living. And I was spending a lot of time, and we were close. And that caused fractures within the family that just catapulted me out of my ways of being in the world. It just, like rocked everything. And so that, looking back, was really a chance to do some more soul work. And so that's sort of, that was, my mom passed away at the end of August 26th in 2024. And So I just find that, when you lose a parent or you lose both of your parents, there are so many dynamics that happen that are unforeseen. You
Oh,
just can't even, imagine where people might go with that grief and that loss. Have you experienced that?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that case, who was the glue to the family of the parents?
So my oldest brother was a dynamo, and his name was also John, and he sailed and taught in the bush in Alaska, and has 5 children that I just love intensely, and so he was sort of magnanimous in the family scope, and then he unexpectedly had a heart attack and died at age 62, which was just crushing for the family. And so with that loss, shifting goes on, and he really was the other one. My mom, I'm not kidding when I say this, she from the age of 50, she bought a home and sold a home every year for 30 years. And
Wow.
she didn't do it to make money, she did it because she needed something to keep her interest and keep her going.
Did she make money though?
A little bit.
Okay.
Not a lot, but enough to keep her going and enough to
Yeah.
keep her life interesting. But,
I was gonna say,
that's
I
oh,
thought
go
your
ahead.
father was the glue. That's what I thought, because in my case, my dad
Uh-huh.
was the glue. In
Okay.
the case of Marie, her father was the glue. And and then there's the dynamics to just everybody's like at each other. Now, my family, it's basically it is what it is, you know. Um, and what I mean by that is, my brother, my sister still lives in Vancouver. I live here on the East Coast in the Philly area, so there's really no butting heads. They're managing everything. They're taking care of mom, which I 100% appreciate and
Mhm,
grateful for that. Um, but I don't know if I don't know if we would butt heads if I was closer. I don't know that answer.
mhm.
But I know we have some differences, but nothing um, nothing tragic in the sense of like let's. I mean, we every family has dynamics. Every family has issues.
Yes.
So with that said, when you look at your life and you're looking at your story, how did you like? You're obviously moving. Like, how did you put that world together and kind of looked at it as a very, like I said, you're a very positive individual. And how did that mindset click in? Like you talked about boundaries where you separated yourself from some people, maybe you took some time out, which are
Mhm.
healthy and understanding because it's a little bit of both. You need to get a bit of growth, they need to grow.
Yep.
But I mean, where did all that come from?
Well, what happened for me when I saw that right after our father passed, and I could see that our mother, was heading toward the end of her journey, probably, in the next 3 to 5 years. I thought, I need some help here. And I've done a lot of reading of, like probably most of our viewers. And so got a counselor, a wonderful person. And mostly we would just sit and converse and by Zoom because, it was during the pandemic. And I found that the pearls that she offered to me were very, very helpful. And just to be able to, share your heart, have somebody hear it. She was kind of an expert in work that helps you identify where you're feeling the pain. Like, you're explaining something, and then do you feel it in your eyes? Do you feel it in your chest? And I have to say, I never became an expert at that. I pretty just wanted to say, it hurts. And I'm feeling a lot of pain, but I'd say, well, I think it's in my eyes because I'm crying. So I guess it's in my eyes today. So, but the process of that was very helpful. And I picked up some pearls from her. That was one avenue that I traveled for soul work. And one of them was because she came from a family of 9
Wow.
and wasn't necessarily close to any of her siblings, And one day I asked her, I said, "How do you move beyond this place of pain and suffering?" And she said, "It wasn't until I stopped expecting anything for my siblings that I could move on. And now our relationships are much better." And you know, it's always that one thing that somebody says at exactly the right moment that hits, and that one just locked in. And I used to have this quote that I made when I was a teenager, and it said, "When you cease expecting, you have all things." And I remember it because my sister-in-law did this beautiful thing with calligraphy, and it was the first time anybody actually cared what was said. And and so I was like, "Oh,
You
wow."
finally mattered.
Like I matter at age 15, I said something that somebody paid attention to.
Yeah.
So, but that stuck with me because, I think it is within the expectations that we get so bogged down, you know, in relationships and with our children, and we want this and we think it should go a certain way, and it almost never does.
Well, you're actually right. I think a lot of it comes. Well, you are right. A lot of things come into is that there's a control aspect, an ego aspect, or whatever that
Yes.
looks like, and regardless of who's doing what, there's always this notion that I need control to look like I'm the hero or I'm actually doing something for the family. You know, I need that praise from mom, or I need that. It all involves attachment issues and all that other stuff that
Yes.
feel worthy. And I think what it comes down to is that, and I'm always not speaking for you, but what I've noticed is, you know, being grateful for what you have versus
Mhm.
what you don't have. I know that's a cliche, but it's true.
Mhm.
But trying to say as much thank you throughout the day and mean it, or say blessings and things like that. That's something I've been trying to work on some more. But I think when you're in those high conflict situations, you have to sometimes take a step back and reassess what matters to you, because every time you're helping the family in one way or another, you could be agitating, creating triggers, you could be whatever. And I've seen that multiple times where a person might say a word and they're triggered and they go off the handle, and it's just chaos. And they obviously need help themselves, but you
Mhm.
can't be part of that conversation until that person does get help or understand where they're at. I think because they're, first off, they're not grateful for the help. They're not appreciative of what's being done, and they think things are being done well without their approval, and you don't
Mhm.
really need their approval, which doesn't make sense. Um, so I think you're right. There's a lot of people out there that have so much expectations on everything.
Mhm.
And everybody has an opinion. Everybody needs to be involved. Everybody is a subject matter expert for everything. But they're not, I mean, online you have more lawyers, politicians, and doctors and all that stuff. I mean, and I mean outside their expertise, like people, just everyday people
Yes.
trying to trying to exert themselves as whoever. And I think that's what hurts our society more and more. And that's why I love the story about your family and all that, because it shows it shows like a little social media experiment per se, that you have 8 children there and you're all kind of like on each other some way or another, and who's pulling who and all that, because it tells us, you know, that our world now is bigger, there's more expectations, and it hurts our day-to-day lives. And how do you come over that? How do you manage that? And I think that's something that we're all struggling with. And when I
Mhm.
see you, I go on your page and it's like, wow, she's really having a great day. And I don't know if that's true every day, but I'm honored because you make me happy. And I'm kind of like, okay, this is cool. And
Mhm.
I get a good vibe from you. And you're always, you know, how did, I mean, when you started, like you said, you went to therapy, you did all that kind of stuff. And did your approach to life change as well? Or you were always consistently trying to be putting that energy out there all the time? Is that, and because that's hard effort. Like I know
Mhm.
it's hard. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
So
I would say, I by nature have always been positive.
okay.
I've looked at life positively. I've tried to approach it in a way that brings goodness to the day, and I think all these things that I've gone through have just, sort of built more of a foundation underneath that, and I so resonate with everything you just said, and I think we're in this world now of perpetual motion, and everybody, there's so much vying for whatever individuals need, whether it's power or money or, the list goes is long. Um, and I find that, getting back to what I wanted to contribute to Substack, there are so many experts out there. I'm not an expert on anything other than my own life
Yeah.
and what I've learned. And so I feel like one thing that I can offer is that, you know, I'm not seeped in grief anymore. I was for a while very, very sad to lose my mom because we were so close, and of course losing my dad. But I feel like, um, so many everybody, most people are seeking something, and we're seeking it desperately.
Right.
And I guess a lot of the soul work I've done is just allowing the present moment to be fully here. And
Mhm.
that's a practice I'm working on, and I'm currently, rereading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's a good book.
Yeah, and just, doing things every day that help bring you into that space of, all we really have is now, today, this moment, and instead of worrying about tomorrow or what happened yesterday, or and I suppose once, with the skills that I've been practicing, it does get easier. Like when something tumultuous happens, I can let it go pretty quickly and just, that was then, this is now, and we're moving on, because once you've had, I think I've had 5 elders pass in, 6 years. And that's like, was sort of earth-shattering for me, but you realize that, we don't know how long we get.
No, no, not at all. No, I
And you've
lost.
just had, I mean, you that must resonate deeply, I'm guessing.
Well, during that time that I was in the hospital, three people passed away.
Wow.
Yeah, so my aunt passed away, a long, long childhood mother, a friend, maybe over, well, over at least 55 years, passed away,
Wow.
and another friend. I can't, and I don't. He doesn't come to mind. I know it's a he, but it was like three people, and
Mm,
it was all within that time frame. And when I was in the hospital, and I was just having this chat this afternoon with my buddy, and he was like, what happened? Kind of like, yeah, you're okay. Why don't you go do this? Why, dude? I can't. I'm restricted from doing X, Y, and Z. I can't really do the things I want. I can't drive. I can't really go for long, huge walks like I used to, or go work out. I got a really, I got a ritual every day that I have to do, which is, not fun, but
yeah,
it's a ritual, and I get bored. You can only do so much in the house. There's so much you can do on the computer, and you can't really sit, and you can't do this, you can't do that. And he was like, well, what exactly did you have? And I was like, and I started explaining, and he was like, holy shit.
yeah,
And he goes, I said, and I don't really know, I don't even, I don't even know what possessed me to go that night in the middle of a storm,
yeah,
to go to the hospital. And as soon as the care team came in, they were just all over me as fast as possible. And I knew something was serious. Like this was not a place to, screw around and find out later,
yeah,
it's something you had to take. But yeah, I mean, don't know. I mean, I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful that it didn't happen. But it sure woke me up and said, I got to really, you know, the last part of my life, I really need to figure things out. and really prioritize things. So, I mean, that was tough, you know.
Yeah.
But and then you have all these passings. You can't go to the funeral because of this and that,
Yeah.
and you feel like you're not doing the right thing. And it's just there's a lot. Not I wouldn't say shame or guilt.
Mhm.
It's just more
Mhm.
disappointment. Is
Yeah.
more of that uh, disappointment, understanding where I'm at, and there's nothing I can do about it. And you know, family members understood, and it's just it's not easy to see people pass on, especially if you had a very long, my aunt since birth.
Yes.
So I know it's hard. I know it's not easy to talk about sometimes, and
Mhm.
it is what it is. Not something I want to see everybody pass, but you think you have this. I think the younger you are, you have this mindset that life is not precious enough. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm. Yes.
you
Yeah.
have this longevity and there's nothing to worry about, but no. And then I don't really like this part of the time of my life where I get to see more people pass on.
Yes. Yeah, agreed, and I'm sorry for your losses. I
Thank you.
I really truly do understand how painful that is, and, um, yeah, I guess it that's another monumental shift, I think, is when you start to, you get to be our age and you realize that, oh, none of us knows how many breaths we get. I read once that it's determined at birth how many breaths you get in your lifetime, and I'm like, "Please give me some more." I
Where
need
do
a
I
few
bank?
more.
Where do I go banking so I can
Yeah,
bank them all in?
that's right. Can't I trade something for a few more? So,
Uh,
yeah, but I tend to think of, I've been reading about, how I read something how humans, were these energy forces, and we keep weaving through life, and we keep circling back to all the lessons that we need. And I really believe that. I see that until we finally get what it is we're supposed to learn, it will keep circling back into our
oh
life.
yes, exact. Oh yeah, I totally believe that. I think
Yeah.
if you don't figure out the first warning sign, it comes back and it comes back a little harder. And then
Yes.
each time it comes back harder and harder and harder until you hit bottom. And when you hit bottom, that's when you kind of look up and say, okay, am I still alive? Because if you can look up,
Yeah.
you can still get up and get going.
Yes.
Um, but it does really take a, it's about being the present moment. It's about gratitude. It's about all those things that I think we've forgotten as humans. And
Yes.
and, and I was like doing a comparison, and I know when I look back in the 1950s or even 1940s, you can't do the 1930s and all that because that was pretty brutal. But
Mhm.
after the war, you saw a lot more gratitude, humbleness. You got more people. You didn't see the chaos in the streets. You didn't see. I mean, yes, it did later, but I mean, don't get me wrong, there was, but not as
Mhm.
bad as it is as it progressed every year. And but you also had a lot of people, and I'm not saying religion is needed for this, but you had a lot of people attending church more.
Mhm.
You had more family dynamics. You had more father in the house. You had more of a mother staying home. You had more of that. You didn't have the extra car, or 3 cars, or 2 homes, or 4 homes. You
Mhm.
had one home, one father working. You really did have a good family that actually practiced gratitude, respect, all those things. And I look at back in the past, all those years, and I go to myself, and I keep thinking, where did we lose that? Because that was a good thing. And I mean, don't be
Yeah.
wrong, there was a lot of bad things going on at the time, but
Yes,
the
sure.
good things were the family nucleus, like the family. Like, why did we disbanded that? Why did we
Yes.
think that was the right idea to do that? I don't. I mean, I
And
have my theories, but
yes, and I'm guessing we might totally, have a common ground on that theory. I tend to think, we got so immersed in this, and
Yeah.
our technology. And then, the that changed everything. I mean, it literally changed the way we communicate, the way we interact with each other, the way, and there's lots of studies that show it's rewired our brain. And I feel like we've become, professionals at being distracted. I have, you know, we all know many, many people that you sit down and you try and have a conversation with them, and they are on their phone.
Right.
And it's the dopamine fix or whatever's going there that they've got to have. Ping, I got it. And I'm like, what? It's just a message from Verizon. I was saying something important.
Your bill is due.
That's and I tell them your bill's going to be due in a minute. So it's like just that we need to, go. We're so tuned into stimuli,
Right.
and I think with that, it robs you of the pleasures of the moment, the what's happening right now, and yeah. So I think that's one of the huge contributing factors. There are others, of course, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the internet has definitely. I think it's started. Um, I just honestly, I have a theory, but I don't want to go there because I might jump into something that is what I want to get into. Um, I think it was. I think a lot of things are intentional in
Mhm,
the sense that being pushed onto us. Like almost a social experiment of some
mhm,
kind, and either keep us distracted, keep us divided, keep us at odds, keep us at differences. And you see that in every fabric in our lives. One of the
yeah,
things that was sacred was sports. Now it's entrenched in sports. So even on Substack, you see it.
yeah,
And it's like the early days of Facebook or Twitter, um, where that toxicity comes in, and I think it's just that's where the difference I see. You always look to inspire, where most people look to become a victim or to degrade, or to because it's easier to do that. That's an easier path to do that.
mhm,
It's simple. The
yes,
hard work is trying to not just inspire yourself and do yourself good, but that will will help everybody around you, and it could spread to others as much as possible. So when I started this Substack, I did it with 100 days, with a hundred stories of inspirational stories, 100 days, and I wrote that up because I thought we needed more people talking about inspirational stories.
mhm,
And what was happening was I was getting certain posts that were moving along, and then I didn't feel inspired after that because I didn't feel anything moved because the expectation was different. I had a different expectations what Substack would do. Like, oh, I read all this stuff and boom, it would go. And I was thinking people would like that, but it didn't grab it. Like, when people didn't see it as a as a need, I guess, is that's because they were so used to the Twitter, X, and whatever you want to
mhm,
call it, Facebook. Like, you can't even go on Facebook and put like I can't even go on Facebook and post my stories without people shunning me. What are you writing? Like, come on, what do you think you are, an author? We,
wow,
but that's the judgment on
mhm,
Facebook because
mhm,
they've been trained to do that. And the
yes,
positive thing about Substack is no one's trained to do that because we're all here expressing our creativities, and we all know how that feels to be, how that's me interpreting how the world works. That's how I look.
mhm.
So, um, yeah, I mean, that's how I see things. And I don't know. What do you think? Is that
Well, first off, it completely resonates everything you're talking about, but I want to take a moment so I don't forget. I want to put a quick plug here for John's beautiful book,
thank you?
because basically I'm halfway through this, and I just so admire what you did with those stories, John. I thought it was brilliant, and you are one of the few people that I came across that was doing that. That you were, I mean, you actually, you read my post, and then not only that, but you turned it into a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that just really flies straight to the heart. And talk about a boost. I mean, that's probably the single it's right up there in the top three of the nicest things anybody on Substack has done, and I'm truly grateful.
Thank you.
And yes, and not only that, but when we were talking about perseverance and sticking to it, you've got to read this book. Those to the listeners that have not read it, this is John's book, and I just you have that grit, John, that like you're going to start something, and I just have this sense I know you're going to finish it. I know you're going to make it work for you. And that's an attitude and a mindset. That's what I grew up with because I was one of 8 on a farm. It was like, if there's a problem, if the pigs are out, don't call me. You get out there and figure out how to get them back in the pen and take care of it. Or you can forget about having dinner, and I love dinner. And I was
Dinner
kind of
is important.
it was important. And
Yeah.
I like to joke about how my dad, when we lived in Seattle, I was a little girl, and he'd pack us all into the VW van and take us to McDonald's or Hershey's. And so he'd get this huge bag of hamburgers and French fries, and he'd start throwing the hamburgers back into the van. Well, my brothers and everybody, they're all grabbing the burgers, and they'd all be done. And I'd say, "Dad, do I get a burger?" And he'd be like, "Give your sister a burger," And so it was kind of, you had to kind
Yeah,
of,
fend for yourself.
you did, and you had to
Yeah.
have a voice because had I said nothing, I probably wouldn't have gotten a burger that day. So
So supper is really important to
yeah,
you.
it still is actually. I love food. And one of the beautiful things in my life is my husband's become very good at cooking, and he does almost all of our cooking. And when it's my turn, I say, "Where are we going? Is it pizza tonight?" Because it's just not something that brings me joy. I'd rather be writing or reading or
Yeah,
playing music or a million other things. So
that's funny.
that's another thing I'm grateful for because I don't know that I get the right nutrition if I wasn't getting steady meals.
Which is important.
It is
Well,
important.
first off, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you're enjoying that book. It was, and that was a period of, like there's still another 2 more books out of there, I think, because that ends around 2000 and I think 11 or 12 or something like that. That's the period there, and then I go on
Okay.
to somewhere else. But the constant battle that I have with the ex continues all the way up until last year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're now free of that.
Yeah. So I actually wrote a post on it. So what happened was she texted me, it was just stupid. And I was like, you know what? I really don't need to talk to you anymore. They're all 18. They all have phones. So technology helps, right?
Yep.
My kids are basically moving on. And you don't need to interfere with that anymore. And I said, my obligations are fulfilled. I've paid my dues. I paid my share, even though you said that I would never do that and I would run away. Never did that. Stuck it out, managed it. And I said, I from now on block you forever from my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's monumental.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And I imagine the freedom on the other side of that has been immense.
Oh, I don't even think about it anymore. Like I used to
Yeah.
get texts here and there, like just to piss me off, or I would try to go and try to, excuse my language, but
No worries.
I would try to um I was talking about Christian like stuff, but here I am cussing. So
Good. Well, as I said, I was a middle school teacher for a long, long time. It'd take a lot to shock me.
that's what it does to you. Sorry. So, no, I have not thought about it. I've not have to worry about it. So two of my children, one moved to Vancouver,
Okay.
um, on a whim, and which is kind of like, that's interesting. And we've started to reconnect a little bit.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, he is the one that I have the more challenges with, than I thought. And then my oldest, he and I reconnected, I think about 4 years, 5 years ago, and we started to develop. Now I wouldn't say we're close, but he is trying to keep his distance. And I think the thing is, once a child leaves that area of trauma and go experience life elsewhere,
Mhm.
they kind of go back and they'll start having this like, was dad really that bad of a guy? All this other stuff. They start questioning all the stories, and they'll start, my son asked a couple times, is this true? And I try to be very neutral to things, and I'm just,
Mhm.
well, that was your mother, that's how she is. You're just gonna need to understand it. I think a major power move that I did, my son was in the hospital with a heart, like water in his heart, something like that.
Wow.
And he basically, um, he was living there by himself, right in Pittsburgh, and the mother is a nurse, and she said, "I need you to come home, and I'll take care of you from home. You'll see all the hospital. You'll do," like, she started to take control again. The expectations, take it,
Mhm.
control, and then her expectation was for me to agree to all that and force him to make that decision. So then what happens is, in a triangle communication like that,
Yeah.
he becomes the hero, I become the victim, or I become the villain, and he's the victim.
Mhm.
And I sat there and I stood up and I said, "Well, I guess I'm out. This discussion is the both of you." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're the medical expertise here, not me. I have no clue. Lucas, I mean, I'm sorry, that's his name." I said, "What do you want to do?" He goes, "Well, I want to stay here and follow my doctor's orders." And I said, "Well, then that's your choice. And I'm not going to force you to make another choice that you don't want to make. So you two need to have that conversation." And I
Yeah.
went to go have dinner. I went to have supper, the most important thing you could ever
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I came back and they were at odds. They were pissed off at each other. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm done playing that gymnastic with you. I'm not going to do that. So her intention, and she got really nasty. I mean, she said, "I expected better from you." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
He's 20 plus years old. I'm not going to tell him what to do. It's his life.
Yes.
Unless I mean, he told me he was going to do this. He told me he's going to do that. I trust he will. And he did.
That's beautiful. I think he handled that absolutely like an expert. And again, just her saying, "I expected," even just those first 2 words, it's
Yeah.
like, well, therein lies the problem.
And then some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's on the book coming out of, I don't know how much more, but I was thinking about that. Um, so needless to say, that's where, you know, I think that's where everybody's stories is. Like, my story started, like, in your story, or not say similar, but we all come from a place of angst and troubles and confusion, and sometimes it started in our family, or it's an outside force that we didn't have any things. And I think with the gratitude and the blessings and the appreciation, that's really where we want. That's where we should try to strive to be more of, and that's hard. It's not an easy thing. So, with that said, now when did you start Substack? Like,
I started in March 21st last year, so I've been on
oh wow,
almost a year.
yeah,
And, so, it's interesting because, you see Substacks that are, just growing exponentially. And, I tend to think that I'm a slow I've always been kind of a sloth-like, and
yeah,
I'm kind of a slow crawl along
yeah,
Substack. But, and I guess, I've written about this on Substack, and I'm finally at a place in my life where I've had to make a lot of things happen. Like, you're going to build a family and you're going to work and you got to pay the bills and all the stuff we do. And I'm finally in this position where I don't have to push, from the moment I get out of bed. And I'm so grateful for that alone. But because of that, I I'm not on a quest, but sort of my mantra is where can I give back day to day, every day in the best way possible, whatever that looks like. And sometimes it's, like I put together a couple ebooks, did a project on Substack that
You
you
did. Yeah,
participated
I
in.
remember that.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And I've done a few lives and I just some of the work for me now is stepping off the accelerator. I'm going to be 60 this month, which is
Oh,
hard for me to believe. I'm like, whoa, another decade. Here we go. But with that, I feel like I'm going to keep exploring how do I send what I call light and love out into the world. And what I always find humorous is I'll put a post out or I'll put a couple really nice flower notes with
yeah.
kind of a blessing, and I'll look the next day and I lost 4 subscribers.
it's the it's the it's
I'm
the
like,
it's the
okay, I sent
carousel
the wrong
issue.
flower today.
Well, I mean, I followed you, I think, day one.
Yeah, I think so.
It was really early. Back then, I was still a small account, and I still think I'm a small account. I don't think I'm a big account. Not like what I see today, where everybody's got like 75,000 followers or whatever it is.
Yes.
It's just so. And I've learned that they were just importing all those data from other places, and it doesn't really make the. It's not. I mean, is it authentic? No, I don't think it's authentic. It's just you're trying to cheat the system.
Yeah.
And I don't think, but if you look at those numbers though, they're not reflecting the post, because if someone has maybe 5, 10,000 likes, or they should be at, if you're looking at your numbers,
Yeah.
20% or 25 or 30%, you should have that amount of money, amount of people commenting on your post every single day. And that's not happening. It's
Yeah.
less than 10% at most case. So that tells me Substack is paying attention to the authentic part of things versus people that are inflating it and treating it like another social media site and playing the game. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's, I mean, I try to be authentic, and I do different things. And like you, I've kind of changed the way I write now.
Mhm.
I really like the ebook thing. I know it took a lot of work. Oh my God, it must have took a lot of work to do that. But that was really cool. I didn't,
Thank you.
that was really neat, and I really appreciated that. And then, there was other things you were doing that was kind of neat and different. And your post has always been about giving back as much as possible, which was really cool. And I can understand taking a time and just kind of like figure it out a little bit, like
Mhm.
what, how much more can I give on Substack? Because it's, if you're treating it like a job, you're not going to be happy with it, right? So
Exactly.
I don't treat it like a job. I really enjoy just posting stuff, and
Yeah.
not that. And I tried, and so one of the things when I first started was daily thoughts. I changed that, moved it into notes, which is more like daily thoughts things with the picture, more spiritual, a little bit more grounded where I'm at. Like, and those are really truly my thoughts at that moment. I'm
Yeah.
not making a big thing about it. I don't, I'm not, I mean, I might have a quote that I came across and I'm just thinking about, oh, that's interesting. And now what I've noticed is that I'm now writing on the responses of those notes or my Substack. And now I'm writing on like, oh, I remember, it just triggers my inspiration, for example. And
Yes.
today was one of those that just inspired me to write about something. And I mean, we're all different in writing. It's something, and that's really, Substack, it can be tough for some people.
Mhm.
And people are looking at numbers, people are thinking about this, people are thinking about that. I think it's the best thing you got to take it is you have to decide what your boundaries are on Substack. You need to
Yes.
figure that out. You need to understand how much volume you want to put in and not treat it like a job because it's not. Creativity is not about a job. It's a really a good hobby to have, and I think that's great.
Yep.
And from what I understand and what I've read, you're not really putting out there in the sense of your work in the sense you're I mean, you might have like some type of pain in some of the things, but you're always ending up with a positive note and trying to find something different. And you take an issue and you look at it and you say, "Oh, this is what this is about." Is that a true reflection on your work? Is that where when your writing style is that more like that, where you take an issue and you say, okay, I'm going to digest this, and then in the end, I have a light or I have a lesson learned. I guess is that's more
I would say yes, that's my flow. And that doesn't mean to say that, I don't experience all the human emotions. I do, just like all of us. And I'm grateful for that. I just make a very conscious choice on how I assimilate that and how I send it out into the world and
right.
and how it affects me in the day to day. And I did write an ebook called that nobody's read called called Substack Success Blueprint, which I don't want to say fast 10 times. I tell my subscribers, say that fast 10 times. um, and so, but what one of the main things I addressed in the book was just what you said, figuring out your boundaries and figuring out why are you on Substack,
Mhm.
and basically what do you hope to get out from it. And I see all of these posts, I'm sure we all do, that are the ones that people are clicking on, and they're all around how to grow your Substack and how to make it bigger and better and whatever you want it to be. And I think there's power in that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think the more people that are reading your work, then of course that's wonderful. Um, and so I just but again, it comes back to the what are the values here? What's most important? Is it that you
Right.
grow, or is it that you grow with love? And everybody has a different answer. And I do want to say your notes are brilliant. They are wonderful. Your
Thank you.
pictures and what you say, and very impactful. Um, and I don't know. I thought about, I thought about that next level of posting, and I did something called Simple Truths. I've done a couple different things, but I find what resonates most is people want those flowers.
Or you lose subscribers.
I'm like, so I don't want to, if that's what they want, that's what brings them joy. And I love flowers, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love more than flowers, but I'm kind of being funny about it. But anyway, I just feel like it brings me joy to share that
yeah.
light with the world. So if I start from that premise, it's good. And I
Mhm.
feel like, like you're saying, you've got to enjoy it. It can't be a grind. Or, I just retired. Why do I want to do something that doesn't bring me joy?
Well,
And
that's why last year I was doing almost 5 days a week posting, and it got redundant and it
yeah,
got boring, and I wasn't really it was more of a chore. And not saying the stories were not good; they were good
yeah.
stories. So this year really changed it up, and I really wanted this show particularly because I was writing about people too, inspirational
Mhm.
stories, and I would write, I would write about them, and I didn't have a follow up per se, like what's been happening. Like I could have done that through through messaging, maybe a phone call, and kind of like, excuse me, trying to get things going. But that's why I started this podcast, was to kind of like go back to the roots of what I was trying to do with the inspirational stories, was find writers and let's write about them. And that's where Friday comes in, where I write about a promo about them, more or less. And then on Monday we sit down and dive in more and more of the work that takes to be on Substack and what's the things going on. I find that a lot more enjoyable because I now have like the two things going on where I write about somebody, but now I have something that I can follow up with, and then the audience themselves, they can get both. That's how I see it. And we're talking about it, everything. And then on Wednesdays, I'm using that more of like a mini series,
Mhm.
like my hospital stuff or the whole or whatever I'm working on. Those will be like those projects I'm working on, and then hopefully those might turn into a book. Don't know. Like
Okay.
when I collected a series of those, so you'll see them on Substack. It's me putting on Substack, trying to figure out how I'm going to write this, and then Mondays, the day of, is more of like my inspirational story, but it's not specific. It's more of my experience on Substack, maybe, or it might be something that triggered that I wanted to write something about it, or
Mhm.
I came across and wanted to share my thoughts on what I thought life is. So it's really a mixed bag of stuff, which has been more. I've been liking it because I don't have to. I'm not in the grind anymore. I feel more relaxed, and I can have these conversations and meet the person personally, and let the other people meet them. And hopefully, my goal is introduce you to the rest of the world that maybe they might start following you and subscribing to you. And that's where that's why I think these podcasts are so more important, because we really don't have that per se, where someone's actually working with people and making them, promoting them or propping them up. And we go back to helping others along the way. And that's my contribution to Substack, is to help those along the way. Now I'm going to do not, I'll be quite honest.
Mhm.
There are going to be Christmas breaks, special occasions, and there will be a summer break, because
Yeah.
there's going to be those are my limitations. So summer, I'm going to have 2 months off, and that's
Wonderful.
not no. I'll still write, but intentionally, podcasts will turn into we'll go to hiatus, and then the fall comes back, we'll start up, and then there'll be Christmas, things like that. So um, yeah, in my head, that's what I was thinking about. So
Well, it's all of it is so, generative and giving, and I just love what you're doing, and the fact that you have all of that going on, is inspiring, truly inspiring in every sense of the word, and John, I'm gonna call it a win. If I don't lose 4 subscribers after this, I'm my bar is way, way low, so
oh, I'm sorry. I feel
no,
bad.
I'm kidding. I really believe that, those that are meant to gravitate toward what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm only kind of scratching the surface. I mean, I love to write, and
Yeah.
I've written a lot of things. I actually put together a book of the time I spent with my mother because she was on lockdown
Mm,
during the pandemic. And the only way she could get out of her assisted living was they said, you're going to have to take her to an appointment. Well, my mom, tiny little thing. She used to be 5'9", and I remember one of her last doctor's appointments. She said, "Well, how tall am I?" And I said, "Well, Ma, they said you're 5'1", and she goes, "That's not possible."
wow,
But
she
she
shrunk 8 ounces, 8 inches.
yeah,
Wow.
she did, and, but during that time, so I signed her up for counseling and physical therapy
Mm,
which she absolutely loathed every single appointment we went to, but that got her out so she could get ice cream,
yeah,
travel around in the car,
yeah, yeah.
and we would talk, and I would make audio tapes, and so then I would come home, and so over that year, I wrote her life story, and at some point, I'll probably, post that pieces of it on Substack. But
Mhm,
I guess I'm just really enjoying the fact that I don't have to produce a lot at this point in my life. And I
mhm.
think I'll feel inspired to do that at some point again. I'm really getting back into my writing posts. I did a post on gratitude, and tomorrow up and coming is the 333 framework you won't want to miss.
And that's tomorrow. Okay, that's awesome.
So I have a couple coming out, and I'm really enjoying that. Just writing, sharing things that I've learned and practiced, and keeping that motivation.
Do you find writing a healing process, or do you find that to be just joy?
Oh, what a great question. For the longest time, it was healing, and I kept journals for decades, and boxes and boxes of journals, and then I stopped journaling, and I guess that was very healing for many, many years. And now, most of the time, it brings joy.
Mhm.
Just in the, I just releasing something that you hope resonates with somebody else, but it meant something to you. How about for yourself?
Well, when I originally started, it wasn't about healing or anything. It was just me just writing.
Mhm,
And then when I got into the stuff, I didn't realize how powerful it could be. And actually, last year was a really, when I wrote Earned,
mhm,
that actually really helped me understand the power of it. Even though when I wrote it, that happened maybe 15 years ago, I would say. I mean, it still brought some, it still brought some pain, but
yeah,
then I realized it wasn't pain. There was a lot of purpose behind it. And, the pain can be like the loss of your children, not the loss in the sense, but losing that connection. There's a lot, there's a lot there. But
yeah,
when I got through it, it actually I went, okay, now I feel better. And now I write, like, my Monday writings are more of a joy because I'm actually philosophizing
mhm,
more or less, like, ponder a life. I see something, I'm pondering it, which is inquisitive and personal. It's so raw. I mean,
mhm,
that's where I want to be. Um, and you learn through those times. Your writing becomes more. The more you do that, I think you find your voice, and the more
mhm,
you get to that truth, it's very
yeah,
powerful. Yeah,
yeah, incredibly so.
yeah, yeah. But the joy part is just philosophizing about life. I ponder this. I'm gonna see what happens here, and then the neat projects I'm doing is pretty cool too. So it's just a mix of everything. So I was just more curious of you because I don't see a lot of the pain writing, and not saying there wasn't, it isn't, because I don't see it, like, it's hard to read
Mhm,
everybody's post.
right, sure.
But I do my best. But
Yeah.
it's kind of hard sometimes. Um, so the thing is that's where I want to see is like, where you are kind of like writing from. So,
Well, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the opportunity to just even reflect and think about that, um, because, I certainly have some very, very pained chapters in my life. And for me, just me personally, some of those involve, health things with loved ones. They're deeply personal, and they're nothing that I need to process and work through with the written word
mhm,
because I've already come to a place of peace with them. Nor would I want to share, it's somebody else's story. And one of the things that happened in my growing up years is that the cross sharing, I watched that do so much damage to myself, to the people I love. And so at a very young age in my 20s, I made a conscious choice. I said, I am not doing that in my adult lifetime. And I've really tried to follow that path as closely as I can. But I guess I really don't, I make a conscious effort not to share other people's stories. Like, relatives will show up and say, "How's so and so doing?" Like our kids. And I'll be like, well, really what I want to say is, you have a phone, give them a call. Give her a call.
I,
See
I
how
love
you're doing.
I
You
love
know?
when people say, "You never reached out." Well, the phone works both ways.
Yeah.
Is it got a dialing problem or what?
Exactly.
Voice activation not working?
Right. That's right.
The antenna's not there or
Broke
what?
broke your finger, can't text. So I guess I really, so the stories would have to be mine.
Yeah,
And then the problem with the writing of them is it includes all these people that I love.
yeah,
And so then there they are right in the midst of my narrative, which is great if, and I understand why people do it. I just feel like I'd probably write it and then I wouldn't share it. So, I guess that's where I'm coming from. I think it can be very cathartic, and I think, if I choose to do it someday, I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
yeah.
But I appreciate that a lot of people live in that space, and that really is very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of walked away from that now. I know, like I said, I don't really. I mean, Earn Not Given was probably one of my strongest books that I've ever written. Um, in a sense that it was threw it all out there, but I
Mhm.
didn't throw it out there in a negative way. I threw it out there as more like my writings, where here's the problem. I'm working through this, and this is what happened.
Yeah.
Good or bad, and try to always keep it in a positive light. Not to despair anybody, not to throw anybody in the bus. I didn't want to do that. Yeah.
I think you do a great job of that, and I think you have so many they end up being pearls of wisdom and things that people can really grab onto, and I really, really enjoy that kind of writing.
Mhm.
And I know I'm just not that person to write that story because I'm gonna end up feeling bad.
Well, Dick Snyder actually read the book ahead of time,
Okay.
and he's one of the main characters in
Yeah.
there. And he was like, "Where did this all come from?"
Yeah. Was there another Dick Snyder in your
No,
life?
no, no. Dick was, yeah, he was a good person. He
Yeah.
still is, and he just had a different way of coming at it. So,
And I
but
loved how you're describing him. Again, I'm only halfway through, but, we all have these mentors and people in our lives that are so unusual, and you just really, bring his character out,
yeah,
and it's a very tender thing to do because, they're being fully themselves, and,
yeah,
oftentimes my way of being is not somebody else's way of being, and,
yeah.
so honoring
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, thank you. I still can hear his voice. "Mr. Ronaldo, good afternoon."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Uh,
Um, well, you've been on Substack almost for over a year now.
mhm.
What are the lessons that you've learned through Substack that you can give to somebody else?
Um, well, I guess as we talked a little bit ago, figuring out what it is you really want from Substack in the beginning, I think is probably the most important thing. Like, do you just want connections? Do you want to earn money? Do you want a lot of, you want to break the record on how many subscribers? Then don't talk to me about that because I'm not going to be able to help you. But kind of that, what are your goals? Um, and then of course the lifting people up, commenting, restacking, sharing their work as much as you can, reaching out personally. I just have some lovely, lovely connections on this platform with, I won't say their names because I don't want to shout them out there. I'm not going to cross share, don't worry. But just people.
George, Henry. No, just kidding.
That's right.
I don't know
But,
who else. I'm just kidding.
yeah. But people that have, really warmed my heart and are now people that I care about.
Right.
And so, that feels really, and people that I've taken outside of this platform, and now we text, which is,
Oh,
I haven't even met, and
that's
I have
cool.
somebody I do that with. It's just a lovely, lovely person. So that's very unexpected. So I suppose that's, the sharing and lifting people, and just, if it is something that's important to you, you have to be here. You have to be present. otherwise, like any other platform, there's just too many distractions. So if you want it to be meaningful, you have to be contributing something.
I agree with that. And with that said, hey, it was really appreciated to come on here. Thank you very much. It's been an honor following you since day one, and thank you for doing what you're doing. You do shed a light on all of us. Just hang on there. Don't go away yet, you,
Okay.
Liz. But I do want to make an announcement. At 6 o'clock, another podcast will happen. It's a special edition. Joe Nichols came out, and we were texting just before the show, and he wants to come back on. So we're going to have that discussion, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we talked about here. The expectations, the performance, and probably help. The goal is always to help other people along the way, and if we can shed a light on that journey, hopefully your path is not as challenging as stuff that we go through initially. But anyways, Liz, thank you very much. It's not, your name's not Elizabeth, is it?
No, it's actually Liz, like
Liz. Oh,
Liz,
Liz.
like
Oh,
LIS, like in Melissa. So my
oh,
so my full name's Melissa, but I
Liz.
go by
Oh,
Liz, and the reason I did that is I wanted to be anonymous on social media, and my students would look me up, and
yeah,
if I was Liz, and plus that's what my family and friends call me is Liz.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So how can people get hold of you?
Let's
Is
see.
it the
Well,
Substack and
yeah,
sorry.
my Substack, and just shooting me a message on Substack or, yeah, that's probably the best way. But if they don't look up lists at Savor Life Studio, that is my email. So basically, make sure I give you the right information here. Yeah, because that would be very sad because I don't email myself.
Well,
Yeah, this at savorlifestudio.com, and I'll be here and I'll respond. But this has been such a joy, John, and I'm just so glad to see that you're looking so healthy after what you went through. You
thank
look
you.
great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And no,
It's
Liz,
it's like when I go to guitar camp,
Liz,
I put two S's because then people are like, "Oh,
Liz,
Liz."
Liz. Okay. That's a hard one to do. That was, what a nickname. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that.
No, no, it's your brothers that called you that, probably.
Yeah, probably. That's another story. That's not all they called me.
Well, everybody, I appreciate you showing up. There was a lot of good comments in there. Thank you, Mary, David, Ashley, and I think Amy Thomas comment. So I want to say thank you for everybody for commenting. Appreciate it. If you are going to be around at 6 o'clock, I'll be back on 6 o'clock to talk to Joe, and we're looking forward to that as well. And thank you. Appreciate it, like always.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time and this opportunity. And thank you everyone who joined us.